Thank you all for coming. This is to give you a little bit of the geography of what we're going to do here. We have 5 aromatic bitters. There's nothing blind about this. These Manhattans that are in front of you don't have any bitters in them. The bitters that are directly below each glass, 1, 6, 2, 7, and down the line, starting on your left, are going from left to right, as you are sitting there looking at them in front of you, will be the Angostura number 6. The Abbott's, if nobody has tasted it, it's quite an interesting new addition to the marketplace. Abbott's from the Tempest Future guys up in San Francisco. Cool stuff. They're doing, they actually own a little guy here. They bought the trademark for that. And then the number 8 place, just below the number 3 Manhattan, will be the Bitter Truth Aromatic, another wonderful bitters. And then my bitters will be in the number 4 slot, would be the 9 slot, and then in the 10 slot, right below 5 will be the Whiskey Barrel Aromatic from Fee Brothers, our friend Joe Fee. To begin with, I thought I'd just do a little ancient history, my ancient history. This was my arrival in New York in 1969, and I wanted to throw up there some of the end of the era, the jazz era that I caught in 1969 when I arrived in New York. And this little deli over here is what it looks like today. Back in 1969, it was a jazz club called the Half Note. The Half Note was right on that corner, and there's the entrance, as you can see, it was on the corner. And you would walk in this corner door here, and the bar was right there. You saw the edge of the bar. The dining room was there, and the stools and some blankets along the windows were over there, and there was the bar. And behind the bartenders was a big shelf. And on that shelf was Roy Eldridge and his Hot Five, Jimmy Rushing singing a great blues singer they called Mr. 5 by 5 because he was 5 feet tall and 5 feet wide, no kidding. And he really was. And I was a wonder the shelf held him. And there was only one white guy in the band. His name was Mousy Alexander, which was the way Roy wanted it, because Roy made his fame. And if you don't know jazz, you wouldn't know little jazz Roy Eldridge anyway. But he made his fame by playing for 10 years with the Gene Krupa band in an all-white band. Had a nervous breakdown behind that. But I met him in high school because my best friend's older brother was a jazz piano player. His name was Charlie Holland. He brought up stars from New York and Boston, and I met him, and when I got to New York, that's him. He was about that big, that's why they called him Little Jazz. But he was known for the high notes, and he was playing there. So my friend and I, the first week in town, we went to Jerry Holland, the brother, younger brother of the piano player, went in there. And that was 18 to drink in those days, but these places, if you wanted to have an older crowd, they would only allow 21 and over, and that's how that place was. So when we hit the door, we were about to be shooed away, and Roy was swinging from the bar to the dining room, and he saw Jerry. He recognized him. You know, I had met him 2 or 3 times when I was in high school, and he goes, "Those cats are with me." Those cats are with me. And this is like my first week in New York, and I'm like, oh my God. And this was just... So we sit down at the bar and proceed to spend way more money than probably the money we needed for the first month to be there. And Roy played from 9 o'clock till 4 in the morning, and all the clubs operated like that, even up on Swing Street, which was 52nd Street. And half hour on, half hour out till 4 in the morning, and you could set your watch, you could go to dinner, go to a show, come back, catch a set, catch a late set, whatever. It never altered. And that's why the jazz scene worked in those days and doesn't work now. The finances don't work anymore. They do 2 shows nightly. They throw 2 drinks down in front of you. They kick you out when that's over, and they bring another crowd and throw 2 drinks down in front of you, and it's shit. This place, you went to a table, you relaxed. It was expensive at the table. It wasn't so expensive at the bar. We never sat at the bar. We just stood in the back like this. We were nursing a beer, you know, and then we go to the corner, cheap place in between sets. But anyway, there I was, and we screamed our heads off listening to Roy. And at the end of the night, Mousy, little diminutive white guy, sits next to us at the bar, and he goes, "You know, you cats don't think that." Like, we're screaming, and everybody got into it, you know. And we said, "Thanks, man, thanks," and that stuff. And Roy, I bring Roy up because for the young cocktailian crowd who are so talented and so wonderful, when Roy was a young player, his older brother, saxophone player, said to him, "You know, Roy, you got to learn how to play a ballad because you're doing this all the time. What happens when you get older and you can't do that shit anymore? You're not gonna, you know, you need to develop yourself. You need to play ballads." So he locked him in a hotel room for a month to teach him how to play that soulful kind of music. And this, I met Roy much later in life when he wasn't doing that. He didn't need me so much anymore. And he said, "Yeah, when I was a young kid, I played all the notes. But now, I play the right notes." And that made me think of bartenders. You know, look at our classic cocktails. 2, 3, or 4 ingredients. You know, all of them. They're playing the right notes. And I tell young bartenders all the time, you know, why not start with an old standard highball or something, like I don't know, what's the one with the Galliano and not the orange juice in the bottom? Put one other ingredient, a little cinnamon syrup. Why not start and just add it and keep it simple, but make it bold, you know? So it was a lesson that stuck to me for me, and it also. The fact that Mousy said, you guys made it happen, I thought to myself, and this was the biggest lesson you can have your first week in New York City, believe me. You don't walk into a joint in New York City looking for a good time, because you'll never find it unless you bring some of it in the door with you. And that's what that was all about, and that's why I brought it up. And that's Joe, my mentor, my boss, and a genius in the restaurant business, with Julia. She was at my bar, made her many martinis. And Joe was a flat-out genius. I don't know how to explain it. Back in 1959 at the Fonda del Sol, he had mezcal, tequila, and pisco. He imported them all for that restaurant in the brand new Time Life building that had just opened. On the ground floor was this beautiful, very expensive celebration of Mexican, South American, and Caribbean foods in 1959 in New York, you know. And right across town in the Sequence building, brand new skyscraper, one of the most beautiful skyscrapers that sits way back from Park Avenue, was the Four Seasons restaurant. It's still there today, and if you haven't seen it, you've got to see it. It's a thing of beauty. And it was seasonally changing menus in 1959, the same year. He was just out there. Joe was out there. He was an amazing character. This was the Windows on the World, another triumph, and of course the Rainbow Room was Joe's final triumph before he died. It was a stunning building. The two architects were, well, the architect of record was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. The construction supervisor was Philip Johnson, and the consultant was Lavoisier. So it's a stunning building. You should stand in front of it. It was the first black glass tower that reflected the stuff around it in Manhattan. Beautiful thing. I was working for a fine dining restaurant for Joe in 1987 for a couple of years when Benny Goodman came into my bar and sat down with Joe at the banquette right across from the bar, and he's talking, and then the next day Milton Glaser and then Phil George and all these artists and designers, Dale Chilhooly came in and they were talking, and I'm like, what's going on? Well, what was going on was Joe was in the middle of a 2-year renovation of something called the Rainbow Room on the top of Rockefeller Center on the 65th and 64th floors, and I said, I want a piece of this, man. I really want a piece of this. So I went to Joe one day, I said, Joe, what if we were to do a menu that had some of the old places that are in the shadow of this great building, like the Colony, Delmonico's, Copa, Lucius Beebe's joint, the Stork Club. What if we, he said, I've done it, and he had done it. He's done everything. It seemed like he'd done everything. And he said, show me a menu, so I showed him a menu, and he liked it. I almost got the job. He said, you have to have an interview with Alan Lewis, who'd been his longtime companion, and not companion, a longtime employee, but friend and consultant. In fact, for 50 years, going all the way back to those early days. He said, you need an interview with Alan Lewis. So I had my interview with Alan, and I go up downtown across the beautiful Flatiron building. He has some offices there. And he's elderly at this time, but not too well. He was the original manager of Windows on the World. He used to be big portly in those days, but he lost a lot of weight. And he had a cardigan sweater on, he had his, like this, and he had his feet up on the desk, and he said, so kid, what do you need to live on? As I sat down. I gotta come up with a figure. So I threw out a figure, and of course, as soon as I did, I'm like, asshole, you idiot, this is too low. And I'm not listening, I'm talking, but I'm not hearing, and it's over, and I'm out the door. And I get out on the street, and I'm like, this is not gonna happen. This is too important to me, it's the Rainbow Room. And I've got to call him. So I went to a phone booth, imagine that, a phone booth, and I go in and with the door, and I call him up, and yes, Mr. Lewis, this is Dale DeGroff. He says, yeah, we want. I said, well, you know, sir, you kind of caught me by surprise, and that figure, you asshole, you're going to make 3 times that. That worked. Yeah, good. Okay, away we go. You actually going to make 3 times that. Where are those managers? You know what I mean? This was my bar, and that was the Empire State Building on my shoulder, and behind my head was the World Trade Towers, which we also operated. So let's get to the subject at hand here, which is bitters. We have an aversion to bitters built into our DNA. When we were hunters and gatherers, you know, we got something bitter in our mouths, and we immediately spit it out because it was probably poison. And here in America, unfortunately, a lot of us still have an aversion to bitters because we grew up in soda pop. And so it's hard, as you all know, as bartenders, to interest people sometimes in Negronis and things like that. I do think that we hurt ourselves sometimes by serving certain bitter aperitivos the wrong way. I think the Italians got the right idea. They serve it always, always, always with a weak ingredient soda, sparkling, not sparkling, natural water, a juice or whatever. And sometimes, lots of times over ice or long, like in the Americano. I think people who serve Negronis up are doing a disservice to themselves. They should serve it the way they serve it in Fiorenzo in a big double, they call them buckets out here in California, I love that. Bucket glass with lots of ice, equal parts, and then a nice big orange slice. Because why? Because then the worst sip is the first sip and the best sip is the last sip. But when you serve it up, the first sip is the best sip and the last sip is nasty. Because it gets more and more bitter, and the bitterness is amplified as it warms up, but it's mellowed as it dilutes over ice. So even just any kind of aperitivo, bitter aperitivo, I think could be served long and with ice. It's much better, and people will warm up to it a lot faster than they will if you don't serve it that way. Angostura bitters is right over there, and I think we should take the cap off and get right into this. And nose it. Now here, the first thing, now some of you have these little thingies on there, food additives, and there's beverage bitters, we all know. And these are supposed to be food additive bitters. We're supposed to sell them in grocery stores if you're smart enough to get that right designation. And so Angostura, I think, would not pass the muster. It's only grandfathered in, and that's why, because it is drinkable. Absolutely drinkable. It may be the last one in this series, except for maybe Joe Fees, maybe the last one in this series that actually is drinkable, because as we go down the line, you're going to see what I mean. You're going to get more and more bitter. I work for Angostura. Here we are at the Rainbow, right? We have dishes with tradition, lobster thermidor, baked Alaska, Tornado's Rossini, and drinks with tradition. We have this long list of classic drinks. Raymond's Quizzes, Sazeracs, and Between the Sheets, and oh my God, the bartenders wanted to hang me from the nearest light post. They thought I was out of my mind. And of course, I had 28 drinks on there, and I should have taken some of them off, and I finally did. Much to Joe's consternation, because we had a Milton Glaser menu that cost a fucking fortune to print. And we had to reprint it right away after 6 months, because I miscalculated how we could produce. You know, and we cut them down by 10 drinks. So that was my learning curve at the Rainbow. So here I am with Angostura, and they come to me and they say, oh, these guys, this guy, he's doing the thing. Maybe now people will buy our bitters again, because every bar had a bottle of Angostura bitters. The only problem was the label was missing, and it was all mad at the bottom, and probably hadn't. Well, as the bartenders used to joke in those days, what's going to last longer, my marriage or my bottle of Angostura bitters? But I did go to work for them, and it did help. You know, I worked for several years, went down to Trinidad, and while I was in there grinding a little bit, I was skating across the floor in those little berries, and I started to reach over, and they hustled me right up. They had taken me as a shortcut through the grinding room, and they were sorry they did. And what those little berries were allspice berries, which is why this is an allspice bitters. I used to use allspice dram, that wonderful liqueur from Jamaica, at the Rain Room, and then we took it off the market. So I wanted flavor. This is not sweet like that, as you'll find out, but it did serve the purpose for me. That's why I created it. So, Angostura, this is not the recipe, obviously, because it's a secret recipe. This can't be the recipe. There's only 3 people in the world that know the recipe, so this cannot be it. But look at the top there, gentian. Really, really important. Gentian is probably the go-to bittering agent for everybody. It is actually, officially, what they measure all other bitter things against. Scientific. Angostura, by the way, let's pick up number 2, because this is pertinent to the conversation. Put a couple drops in the glass right above it. Swirl it around a little bit, and then taste this. This is Abbott's. What do you nose? And I didn't even ask you what you nosed in Angostura, because it's like the Christmas tree. It's like Christmas in a bottle. But how about this? Nose this.
Clove.
Clove, what else? Get those pastry vanilla icing notes. Almost like a white pastry cupcake with vanilla icing. It's incredible. It smells like it's going to be sweet, doesn't it? Angostura also smelled like it was going to be sweet, didn't it? And it was. Let's see if this is sweet. Not quite. I don't think we're going to be doing shots of this. Probably not. It's a little bit of a rougher customer. But it's more what is bitters actually supposed to be? What do we use it for? We use it to balance. Sweet. Bitter. You know, we use it the way we use lemon and lime juice, and so it is a balancing agent. It brings flavor too, but it's a balancing agent in the end.